All right, I'm going to do an introduction here. So, one of the joys of owning a podcast is you get to do whatever you want, and you get to meet whoever you want, and you get to talk to whoever you want. And if nobody listens or watches or cares, it doesn't really matter because it's a great tool to meet people and to understand maybe some motivations. And my goal in doing this podcast is really to help other people understand how individuals got into their careers, how they made choices, maybe some of the pitfalls of what they chose, and maybe some of the joys. And I like writers. I like writers because they work in solitary confinement. They rarely break through into any kind of Ernest Hemingway sort of fantasy where they get to drink, spend money, and get famous. But one of the people I really want you to meet is Rory Nugent. And Rory is, I don't know, he's kind of an icon for doing things that you shouldn't do. So some of the things he's done is he's traversed the Atlantic at least 4 times, and the 5th time I think went tits up. He went into probably the most violent, senseless war that I've ever covered, that I've ever visited, which was Sudan back in the 80s and 90s. And he went sort of, not undercover, but, embedded, I guess is the wrong word, but with the IRA. And those are a nasty group of people. So let's get to it and let's learn more about Rory Nugent. And Rory, welcome. When you were a child, did you envision that you would be what you are today?
Oh, good God, no. I have no idea what I was going to be. But I will tell you a story. As a kid, I was worked in a local supermarket. And as I was unloading bananas, I imagined myself getting these bananas. I didn't know how I was going to do it. But, here you are in the freaking Grand Union, and, you're getting minimum pay, sub-minimum page. You're 12 years old. You can't complain. And all I'm daydreaming as I'm putting up yellow banana after yellow, oh my God, it's green banana, is I'm going to find the perfect banana someday. But I got to get there.
So the first sense of exoticism came through with a banana. And, personally, I just wanted to get out of where I lived. I grew up in Edmonton, and that's like the last stop before the Arctic. And anywhere other than Edmonton was a great place or a great adventure. But when did you first start acting on your sort of adventurous feelings?
I guess that I would have to go back to 1975 when I was building boats at the time, and had an opportunity with a couple of friends, 5 friends, to build a boat with them and then sail it in a single-handed transatlantic race.
Right. Now, that's a very short anecdote, but let's unpack that. So how old are you in 1975, and what the hell were you thinking about crossing the Atlantic?
I was 23. I dropped out of college and moved to Martha's Vineyard because I didn't have enough money to get to Nantucket. Ended up on the vineyard, worked at a boatyard, and I had skills with tools. And then migrated over with a friend to start our own business, Daffy Duck Marine. And in one day walks this guy, Dick Newick, who was a famous multi-hull designer. He's looking for cheap labor to build his next generation of trimarans. Far out, we needed work. We'll take the work, this is great. So we built these new 30-foot trimarans for him. And he said, sure, you can use the molds you just made. If you want to make one for yourself, that's fine by him. So 5 of us got together, ponied up cash, anteed up our cash, and then I took it across the ocean in the Observer single-handed transatlantic race.
Okay, now, again, I just want to unpack that one phrase, I took it across the ocean. So in planning for this type of thing, other people have crossed the Atlantic, of course, but is there a sense of foreboding, or are you young enough and stupid enough to figure that we'll just start here and we'll end up there?
Well, I had a background in sailing. I grew up around boats. I had done some long distance racing, but never by myself. And figured, what the fuck? You got to do it at least once, and you got to start somewhere. And to get in this race, you had to have this very British race, you had to qualify. So you had to sail 750 miles and then send in proof that you had done this. And that was my introduction was, whoa, 750 miles, but now I'm going to do 3,000 miles. And that's exactly what happened.
So, it's a classic cliche, right? Sailing alone across the Atlantic. Is it as miserable and as wearisome and as frightening as most people think it is, or was it just doing what you did?
It's all of that. The ocean is your master. You are the slave to this huge body. It will toss you around and it will show you wonders and joy that you've never experienced before. And much of that comes out of weathering the worst time of your life and going, oh, I'm still alive. The boat is pretty much in one piece, or I can patch what's broken and we can keep going. But even so, I feel great. Craziness? Yes. Insanity? Bordering it. But Robert, nuts find nuts. Here I am talking to you.
Well, no, there's a Western philosophy that hardship breeds character, and that if it was easy, there would be no benefit. Do you feel there's a benefit from exposing yourself to hardship for protracted periods of time, or is it overrated? I mean, that's really the core of my interest sometimes is, choosing the easy path versus the difficult one. Is it worth the investment and the time, and did you learn something from that trip?
You learn an immense amount, not only about yourself, but about the tools that you have around them and how to use them, whether it be in navigation or as simple as getting a boat to move so that you're in sync with the water. Sailors have this thing that they call the slot. It's a narrow window when everything you're doing is the best it can be within the confines of the ocean. So the boat's moving as fast as it can, and it's in perfect sync, and you can feel the vibrations of the ocean going up through the rudder, into the tiller, and into you. And it's an incredible high. No drug has ever given me the same kind of high as that. So you get this pleasure, and you get this pain. Between the two, I'm taking pleasure as much as I can. Pain, if that's part of the process, okay. How much pain is involved? As little as possible, I hope.
So let me ask you, do you carry on, you're by yourself, I'm sure you have a radio at some point, but do you carry on an inner dialogue, and is there just one other person you're talking to, or are you talking to yourself, or does solo sailing breed insanity, or is it actually healthy to have this entire trip sort of inside your head?
It's interior dialogue, and yes, you're calling up different people that you know, and imaginary characters that you have no idea where they came from, but there they are standing next to you, or lending an ear to your mumblings. So, the longest time I've spent at sea was 31 days alone, and at the end of 31 days, by the time you get where you're going, you really don't want to talk to anybody for a while.
Right.
Until you can really pull it together and digest what you've just done.
So
otherwise, you become this really kind of jabbering idiot.
So a little snapshot. So, there's terminology about the quiet professional, sort of the silent, the person who, if you keep your mouth shut, you won't dispel the idea that you're an idiot. I find that when I do expeditions, you come back and you land in the city and everything's just loud. Everybody's talking too loud. There's cars, there's planes, or whatever. And there is a philosophical beauty inside that quiet, inside those internal conversations. Now, you may be talking the most ridiculous things, but I think that's something that's worth achieving, right? Do you think it creates sort of another level in your personality?
It certainly creates another level in understanding yourself and life in general. So you're alone in the sea, and you're powerless in this way against this other agent of wonder. And some days it comes across as this marvelous deliverer of sensation. And other times it's a punishment, and it becomes an S&M game. So you feel that you're in this. You're getting battered and beaten. I live in a coastal town. that's dominated by the fishing industry. And most of my friends, by age 50, I mean, they're just, they're bruised, they're broken, and they can't fish anymore. Because they get thrown around, the scallopers, they'll get thrown around the boat, into the sides, into the other side. Oh my God. And they're blown out knees. They're like plumbers who, their knees blow out when they're 55.
And I'm sure smoking and drinking is part of that culture as well.
When you're back home,
Yeah.
The idea of smoking pot or doing anything by yourself at sea, it's a little bit beyond my reach.
Well, again, a good point. People always say that the search for adrenaline or the search for excitement is actually a harmful thing, that it generates negative. I don't have that problem, but I mean, some people have written books about how messed up they are and how they sought out danger and excitement. Do you feel that your pursuit of this perfect space is a negative or positive thing? Does it create any reactions? Like when you come home, do you find out that you do things you shouldn't be doing, or is it a perfectly healthy thing?
Only Allah perfect. So I don't know if perfection or even a mismatch. It's an experience. And I come home from, let's say, being at sea or delivering a boat or racing across the ocean, and I seek solitude up to a point, but my girlfriend demands a certain amount of interaction. You got to walk the hounds. You got to participate.
Yeah.
And it becomes an experience, and it's up to you to digest. But you still got to figure it out on some other level and make the dough to pay for the next trip out.
Right. And I can't interview.
That's the reality of it all. So I'd love to live in the dream my entire life. I love that.
Well, the problem is I can't interview dead people, and many of the people that I've known that were shot died of drug overdoses. But I think it's healthy to talk to you about looking backwards and forwards, because a lot of young people, when they're faced with making decisions, don't have a range of options, and I don't want to lecture, but I'm just saying that when you made that decision at 23 to sail across the Atlantic, it's a risk, right? There's no reward. The reward might be ego, might be accomplishment or whatever, but it's hard to infuse an idea that sometimes the things you do that don't make sense actually make the most sense later on in life, right? And you did something equally as stupid, is that you became a writer. And tell me your transition from someone who's at peace in the ocean to someone that wants to write for a living, which is basically sitting in a chair, staring at a typewriter or a computer screen for hours at a time.
So we have to go back in time to my fifth attempt at a solo crossing.
Right.
And that's when I made it halfway. So I've done it 4.5 times. I'm taking the fraction as most meaningful for me.
Yeah.
And it happened on May 17th, 1980. So we switched back the clock, and it was the day before Mount St. Helens blew up. I only had a receiver radio. I couldn't speak to another ship or anything else. That would be too much weight, battery power, and everything else. So I only had a regular shortwave radio. And I'm listening to reports from Mount St. Helens when, good God, there's a subway train coming at me, this noise of this remarkable metallic thing. And I am 11 miles from that exact spot in the North Atlantic, most remote from land. It is 11 miles by my calculations. I had taken a sextant reading my navigation earlier in the day, and that put me atop just on the other side of the Mid-Atlantic Ridge.
Got it.
And this huge noise came at me from out of the west. And I'm heading east. And I look behind, and there's this mammoth wave coming at me, a rogue wave. It was taller than my masts. My masts were 48 feet tall.
Wow.
So this thing was 50 to 60 feet tall. And it picked up the boat as if it was a Tonka toy and rose up. And meanwhile, I'm at the helm, letting go every sail, but I have no control. The rudder's not doing anything. The sails are just flopping. lines are just slapping all around. I'm literally within the paws of Poseidon. And the boat goes up the top of the wave, and then coming back down is like this vertical drop, and the boat just literally shoots itself, the catamaran, into the air, and I go upside down. And that's how I land, with my feet pointed to the stars, my head pointed to the bottom of the ocean. And this thing goes on, and I'm left, good God. And wow. So I was a pro at that point. Everything had been saved in the sense of a disaster bag set up in the right spot. 40 days of supplies were inside, mirror, a pink paint to put on the bottom of the boat, and an EPIR, electric radio indicating beacon. This was 1980. They were just figuring this out, both the machinery as well as the geospatial arrangement.
So you were ready for disaster, and
I was ready for disaster, but then there was a problem I hadn't thought of, and that is, okay, you've got all this stuff, where do you put it? So I put it in my life raft, thinking that's the safe place to put it. And I sat atop the boat, akimbo, this like a large Hobie Cat-like boat, with stripped out racer, and I was able to put my legs astride the hull and hold on to the centerboard. And when dawn broke, or the first light broke, there wasn't anything left in the life raft. There was a slit in the bottom of the life raft that went from one end to the other. Fuck.
Now you're on plan C.
Everything's gone except for a box of chocolate I had put inside my survival suit, which had kept me alive, and I put that on, a flare gun, and one flare. So I wouldn't have to look for anything at night. Chocolate bars would get me through the night, and I was going to be rescued in the morning. So this was great. And then, you look and there's not a freaking saltine left, and less than a quart of water.
Are you in the shipping lanes when you sail across the Atlantic, or you just choose the fastest route?
In this case, I was trying to break the record, so I was choosing the fastest route. I wasn't specifically in the lane at all.
Yeah.
And so began, life adrift. And it's the topic for a new book that I'm doing right now.
Oh, awesome. So you spent 5 days, apparently. Is that correct?
That's fine, yeah, literally. 4 days, 20 hours.
And that wave was a direct result of the explosion of Mount St. Helens? Was that
I love to think that that's the case. I love to think I'm a Mount St. Helens, victim.
You can apply for compensation.
A compensation fund. A scientist, when I mentioned this to a scientist at Woods Hole, he kind of shook his head but said, maybe. I'd love to say that. The problem is, in the ocean, there are such things on a regular basis called rogue waves.
Yes.
They could be 3 times the normal size. At the time that I was going, the seas were 6 to 8 feet. So it could have been 24 footers, not rare. A 55 footer, something multiple of, let's say, 6, that is very rare, we think. Yeah. How little we know about the ocean, it really comes out of all of this.
Well, when you're on a ship, you're supposed to, and I've had some of those waves, but I don't think there's been as big as yours, but you're supposed to full power into the wave, right? You're supposed to stay in a certain direction and then ride it out. But a small craft like yours would just get flipped like a paddle board.
There's no one, you don't get any, nobody's knocking on your door telling you, get ready. It's coming at you.
Yeah. Okay, so that's a new book you're working on, which is awesome.
So you want to turn the boat around, you want to face it head on.
Yeah.
But good luck to you.
Especially, yeah. Well, no, I don't mean to be like, you should have done this. I'm saying that
the diagram in this book says, yes, this is what you do, but try it. God love you if you pull it off.
But I think we're talking about statistical realities. If you do something long enough, there will be that one rogue thing that changes your plans for you, and that's when your survival skills are important, and particularly losing all your survival gear in the raft. It's like plan B, plan D, plan C. So you're writing a book about this, but you started writing obviously much earlier, and we're going to plug your book, but you did this thing, you ended up being rescued, and you didn't make a sixth attempt, right? So this is obviously a change.
And I got into writing because now I'm in, horrible debt. I have, refused to sell the boat 2 days before I left. Girlfriend and I co-owned the boat, and we said, now we can get more money for this boat. It's going to win the race. It's the odds-on favorite. Ladbrokes was giving us even odds to win. So I was like, okay. So now, totally saddled with debt. And the only way out of it was, let's, write a magazine article and see if someone will pick it up. And someone did pick it up, gave some bucks.
Give me a snapshot, because I think most people think that that's like going from dumb to dumber, meaning like you need money, let's be a writer, get, whatever the minimum wage they pay today for writing. But at that time, give me a snapshot of the magazine industry, because it actually was a very, thriving, lucrative place for some people.
Toward the end, this was, 1980, so this is before the peak years, and it was for a magazine that didn't last long. So,
but they were hiring people to write great stories, and if you the peak, maybe the new journalism, I think it was called, was looking for adventurous, crazy stuff. Rolling Stone, Esquire, I mean, you name it. They were sending people off to terrible places to write stories about amazing things, and that's kind of where I thought the magazine world was where I should go too, because how else would you get somebody to pay you money to go do stupid things? And that was the magazine world.
And that's what happened to me in the end. By 1990, when the magazine world was really kind of flush and willing to pay dough to a non-A-lister, that was time. Now I got to really figure it out, get an agent, and do this. And before that, I had written books about just my expeditions. And those, I'd like to talk about a little bit about going from the boat, then moving to New York City to make money to get out of debt. Do horrible things. I wrote screenplays for what was then the emerging music video. I wrote the screenplays for Kool and the Gang's early video.
That's great.
MTV was just starting. New York was a buzz. There were only 300,000 VHSs in the country. There was still a battle with Betamax going on. But the record industry execs understood that they had to get it at least to the stores to play the visual that as a marketing tool from whoever act they were behind. So they would they would give a budget of $4,000. So for the Bell brothers in Kool and the Gang said, we got $5,000. What can we do? It's like, not much, but we can put something together that will work.
And is this your agent getting you these jobs, or are you bumping into these?
This is a company I founded with another guy who was a real smooth marketer and talker. And then I was the guy sitting in the Carol, scribbling away, trying to figure out how to do this on one shot, one deal, and where, and can't pay for rent. Just get this thing done and out the door, and it'll be great.
So how did that work out, the video scripting career path?
It eventually turned into this real moneymaker. It was great. And as soon as I made enough dough to climb out of debt and had some in the bank, it was, okay, I'm not selling my soul anymore. I'm going back to doing what I think I want to do, but it's not going to be sailing. It's back to the Grand Union packing bananas. I'm going to Africa. I want to look for
give me a snapshot at that time. Give me the year and what was going on in Africa.
So this is 1985. I leave corporate America, finding that, making a lot of money is, one, not hard, and two, really costs you plenty personally. In loss of soul and loss of direction and the amount of drug intake that you get.
How old are you at this point?
That had to stop.
How old are you at this point?
30, 32, 33.
That's a good age. You're still young and healthy. You had plenty of time to get sick and beat up. So
Yeah, I was dying from malaria.
So Africa, what was happening in Africa that made that? Because bananas usually come from Colombia or Latin America, but what was happening in Africa that attracted your attention?
At that time, I had read an article about a dinosaur that was likely alive in the middle of the continent, literally in the Lucala swamp of the Congo, the Republic of the Congo, Brazzaville.
Now, this is cryptozoology, which was quite big at the time because, there was a whole, before the internet and before there was there were these weird magazines about things that existed, like, Loch Ness Monster and Ogopogo and things that floated, they had the Yeti in Tibet and things like that. This was actually a very popular, but not mainstream journalist genre, right? This was more like UFOs and crazy people, but there were magazines that handled it, and also late night radio shows.
Sure, and for good reason. There was enough doubt before conspiracy theories were rampant or anything else, but there was enough doubt and evidence of certain phenomena. Yet, what else makes footprints this big?
Right.
Dinosaurs. Why do locals believe that there's a place you don't go because of a spooky animal there that will kill you?
Now,
But it's unlike any other animal we know.
And do you remember at the time when you had aviation maps, there were white spots, right? So you'd roll out your map of Africa, or even Michelin, and there would just be nothing there. And these were the places where these things lived, right? There was no sort of...
Absolutely.
Yeah.
This was before, even with, was the Landstar, the first radar projections couldn't penetrate the leaves in the Amazon or in the Congo, certainly. So there were white, this whole set of maps here of white blanks on the map. And there still exist a few.
Yeah.
And that to me was great. But at the same time, the idea that, I'm telling friends, I'm going to go look for a dinosaur, and they're going, what the fuck? You go fucking crazy. You can't, what are you doing? And then realizing that what I needed was just like Hitchcock in creating a McGuffin. The whole idea that you create.
The story thread that's in your elevator pitch to an editor, because he's going to call you crazy and go, no, when you whip out all this scientific evidence that something does exist and historical myths and things like that, right?
That's right. You've got this background, but at the same time, you also have to deal with yourself and your own self-doubt that, this is all crazy crap.
Right.
But it's a large suffixing clause that comes with the but is you just don't know. And my girlfriend at the time was a professor of biology at Harvard. And she said, 50 yards off the path, we don't know what's there.
Correct.
In the sense of the etymological insects, beetles, etc. And that was like, okay, there's that. And so a dinosaur, using the dinosaur as my MacGuffin, something that focuses attention but doesn't determine the plot in any way.
Right.
I think the Maltese Falcon. That was Hitchcock's.
Right.
And that made perfect sense. Here's this thing that I can search for. But if I don't find it, that's fine. And in fact, I really don't want to find evidence of a dinosaur. So let's say, and it's to this day, people will write me and ask about the photographs I took. And the problem there, I've always, even when I was in Africa, was if you do cite that dinosaur, the locals lose out. They'll become maid and lawn keepers of the new established scientific park that's owned by the big shot in Roswell.
Right.
Locals get scuppered up. That's what I think.
Well, okay, but just so you have a premise. It's normally a scientific premise, right? You'd go to a university and get funding and spend all their money and spend 5 years doing this. But you got to convince an editor, right? An editor needs to sell magazines. So it's kind of I got this crazy guy who's going to brave. You have to have a terrible journey, right? You can't just take a plane there. And here's this scant sort of yellowed bits of information. But they would never approach it like the coelacanth or the 23-foot crocodile, which are basically dinosaurs, existing in real time. So you have to promise the editor that you're going to get so fucked up and so dirty and tired and abused, whatever, that the trip is worth the story. Am I correct?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And you also have to realize that they're not going to pony up all the cash, because nothing goes according to script in the beginning.
Well, give me that breakdown for people that don't know this industry. Because when you sailed across the ocean, you had a certain budget, and you had to borrow money or get people to sponsor it, and you didn't make money, or you might have made money, but you didn't. When you write a magazine article, the grander your ambition, the further you have to travel, the more the expenses are. So there's your fee, which is sometimes per word, right? And then there's the actual expenses of not only flying, but porters and medical stuff and whatever. Tell me how you broke it down to the editor.
So to the editors, it was a flat fee. We'll come back with a story.
Yeah.
And hopefully I'll get beyond the capital. There's no guarantees here.
What was your flat fee? What was your flat fee, and who did you pitch?
So I'm pitching Evergreen magazine, Barney Rothschild at Evergreen, who said, yeah, this is so flip. What the hell? I'll give you a couple of $1,000.
Right.
Good luck to you. And more than anything, it becomes self-financed.
Exactly. So you're hoping to spin this into something else later, which it did become, but we get into that. But you're investing. You're not saying, oh, I'm not moving unless you pay for everything, first class tickets, blah blah. You're saying
I'm doing this trip.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping to market it before I leave to at least cut some expenses.
Got it.
But I've saved enough dough to make sure that I do this thing that I'm looking for and wanting to do.
Yeah.
And yeah, that means a personal investment in both time and dough. And so the magazine sale is really secondary.
It's marketing. It's almost marketing.
Very much so. So when I came back, and Barney and Russell was a good friend, he's saying, oh man, this is great, but all right, we'll see. And the magazine closes, before the thing. I get paid, but the magazine closes.
Right.
Okay, so I end up writing a book, and that becomes, a springboard to writing another book and another expedition.
Now, how did you get the book deal, and what was the book deal worth, so people can understand the mechanics here?
So in the end, the book deal, the book took me 2 years to write. So you got to finance all that. And out of it, the advance was $28,000 in 1989.
Well, for a crazy idea, that's not bad, right? That gets you into the marketplace. And back then, you could actually sell a book and make royalties, correct? Which I think are 12% of cover price.
It was 12% of hardback, yeah. And then it drops to 6% with soft cover. And the publisher, it's not taking much of a chance at 30 grand.
No, not at all.
And because of that, your entry fee is so little. You get a lot more on the back end. So you only have to sell U.S. rights.
Right.
And then hopefully you can market the sucker to different languages. So that my first book, The Search for the Pink-Headed Duck, it's another adventure, gets syndicated into 18 languages. So you actually end up making some dough.
So well, first of all, let me just interject, because you took a risk. I know that these things that people tout as being like lost mythical creatures usually end up being some really unattractive sort of donkey-like creature, like in Vietnam or something, that somebody killed 20 years ago when I was looking for Yeti in Tajikistan, the guy said, yeah, every year we get these Japanese film crews, they pay us like $100,000, and we tell them, oh, we just saw one over here. But basically it's a living, for the village. They never see one. They'll see tracks, and then they're happy they go home. When you did your thing, you could also end up being ridiculed by saying, you're just bullshitting, you're making this up. Now, our friend Tim Cahill has done that for many years, just like going for the humor angle, and I think P.J. O'Rourke also made a lot of money on the humor angle. Was your tone serious, or did you keep it lighthearted, or what was your tonality through the article and the book?
I was self-deprecating throughout the book. I mean, I knew that, come on, this is crazy stuff. And yeah, and the people you bump into, because it is a bit crazy.
Right.
And you understand, you're open to that. This isn't a serious scientific investigation.
Right.
I don't want to pull anything over, any wool over the eyes of the reader to pretend that I'm something I'm not. And that's, King Cola. I'm the king of the nuts.
But this is my point, is that you captured the spirit of adventure. Is that if you run into a pragmatic person who says, that's a stupid idea, don't do that, it doesn't exist, that's not entertaining for readers, but yet people get infected by a sense of adventure. And they'll say, yeah, let's go look here, do that. And this is what makes writing, or your writing, a joy to read, because you get it. You get that this is an idea you cooked up that's based on sort of flimsy, but, maybe reliable stuff, and you go for it. And you have no idea what's at the end. And that is adventure. There's no payoff at the end.
The beauty of it is just in that one phrase. You have no idea where it's going to take you.
Right.
But you're in for it, and you're going to roll the dice and go with it.
Right.
And because of that, you're going to meet people on the fringe who are interesting in their own ways.
Correct.
Like the guy who has just seen the dinosaur and is willing for, the equivalent of $10 to show me the footprint that,
yes.
That lasts in a rainforest.
Right.
And I'm going, hey man, you can come up with something better than a footprint in a rainforest.
Yes.
It's not going to stick around very long. What are you talking about? Well, maybe, and then backing off. Or when I was in India looking for the pink-headed duck,
right,
making this a vocal search of where people, especially in India, where you can search for crazy things. You can go on pilgrimages for the most insane things, and that's okay. Everybody understands that. Right. You're looking, you're searching. And in the Calcutta then, Owl Market, which was the last sighting of a duck, though dead, I'm looking for a pink-headed duck. And so by the end, I had to get out of Calcutta because people were bringing me spray-painted red postcards. Yeah. And I had to buy the damn things and clean them off and then release them. And everybody knows that this is, this is the scam they're going to run. And they know that I know. But what the hell? It's an easy way to make $5.
It's a great concept, though. It's a great book. So let me ask you, so you became a little bit typecast, but you did some really dangerous things, right? And I don't want to make light of the fact that, he went looking for a pink-headed duck and a dinosaur in the swamps of Congo. But you got involved in two specific things. One was, of course, Sudan, and the other one was the IRA. Now, I don't know which one you want to talk about first, but tell me how you transitioned to, holy shit adventure. And not that sailing isn't holy shit.
So I wrote two books based on two expeditions that I did. One was looking for the world's rarest duck. Mm-hmm. Which was last sighted in India in 1935, as it was being taken out of the mouth. The foaming mouth was the description of a black Labrador by a British expedition hunter. That was the last time it was seen, good God. Right. And I thought, what the hell? Maybe this thing is not extinct, but it's just hiding, and it's got great reasons to hide. And, besides which, I want to go to this part of the world. There was a story to do on the Burma Road, and I thought, I got to get there. And so this was the idea of the McGuffin. The pink-headed duck was a door opener to all kinds of things, going to Burma, always wanted, ever since watching the Hollywood movies, I want to go to Burma. I want to go down the Irrawaddy. But more important, I wanted to go down the Brahmaputra River, the fifth largest river in the world. What is this like? But good God, well, eventually the Indian government let me, because of their new friend, the Chinese have all the fortifications along the border. They allowed me to go up and do this trip, starting in Tinsukia, which was the railhead for the Burma Road, and then down all the way to Bangladesh and into the Bay of Bengal. And insane trip taking me through, down through Kali's land. So, the world's largest freshwater island, Majuli Island, is reputed within the Hindu religion to have been Kali's left breast after Brahma had cut her into millions of pieces after trying to destroy the universe. But they were very serious about this. This was the sacred spot. And,
were you turning these little side things into other articles, or they're including them just in the book? Was the idea?
This is the book. This is all part of the adventure of the book, of the adventure of the unknown. And it's mostly because I have no idea, as a Westerner, an Irish Catholic New Yorker, grew up as such, into this other culture and other world of both color and belief. And you just don't know until you're there. I don't care how much reading you do. And, before any of these trips, I would just lock myself in the library and read as many books as I could about every little spot that I thought I'd be visiting. But you end up visiting other places and other cultures.
Well, I want to mention there is a missing chunk to a lot of adventure. And that is when you go in, the Royal Geographical Society has a library, and it at first seems a little dry because it's notes and sort of books from the 1800s and 1700s. But when you start reading those books, you sort of recapture that feeling like people didn't know what was there, right? And so they either overlaid their ideas, prejudices, religious beliefs, or whatever, or they had an open mind. This is why I like Richard F. Burton. He kept an open mind and just wrote down what he saw. But one of the things that's missing from a lot of American adventure writing is that historic sense of just going over the edge. And did you ever capture that before you prepared for these trips?
That was the foundational idea behind all of my travels. And again, we're back to the McGuffin, was this thing that I could pitch, right? That would be focused, but determined nothing. Right. It was a door opener every step of the way.
But that's an editorial trick in which an editor is saying, well, what do I get for my money? Just you having a good time, getting dirty and messed up is not what business I'm in. You have to say, so-and-so climbs Mount Everest, so-and-so discovers the source of the Nile, type of thing. And I'm just saying that's maybe what cripples modern adventure, is that you have to have a payoff. You have to go somewhere, find something, there has to be a reward, and not the journey, which in itself is probably the most interesting part.
But that is the most interesting part, and it's your telling of what you've met along the way. Right. And that means, getting back to what you were saying originally, that means you have to do a lot of research. You have to have read Burton before you go into the jungle. Right. And be in all of his semantic abilities to be able to pick up the language and talk to people. Mm-hmm. And to get over the colonial aspect that comes with it, and just read it for its nature notes, what he saw and transcribed. And that has to enter your writing as well. I mean, it's in the back of your head as the writer. It's a reference point. It should be in the end notes.
Right. And also finding crazy people that share the love of adventure, because I'll go out of my way to find curious people, right? People that don't quite fit in, because they add color to a region. And to me, those are the people, they're not experts, they're just passionate about something, or they have ideas about something. But, I was in Sierra Leone, and all these gold miners and just crazy people that were fixated on getting rich and whatever. And I think that adds to the richness of the idea of adventure. They don't necessarily have to have a logical reason for doing what they're doing. They just have passion.
it's different people, it's different stories.
Right.
And as writers, we're telling a story that's going to keep the reader or an editor fascinated.
Right.
You know, the moment that you let your reader's eyes wander off the page, that's the rewrite. And that's where I got to start going back to rewrite and figure out what's wrong.
So I don't know if you watch Netflix, but I'm kind of Netflixed out because they've gone from funding quirky people to do quirky entertainment to having literally a formula, a structure that people should follow when making adventure films or whatever. I watched one film 2 days ago and I watched another one. They're called action adventure films, but they spend most of the time talking, right? And I turned to my wife and said, when did action films become talk films, right? And I'm just saying that when you go to people today, whether they be people commissioning documentaries or books or articles, they're very uncomfortable with the idea that you're a fairly curious person about to spend 3 months, 6 months, a year exploring something that has no definitive payoff. They would rather deal with the formulaic part. And I'm bringing this up because a lot of folks who talk to me and I'm sure talk to you want to know, like, make it a guarantee. If I do this, will I get that? And I'm like, no, that's not the point. You know, it's the doing, not the ending of what you achieve.
And this gets back to what we were originally talking about, of having, you know, an idea of where I'm going, but it's the unknown.
Right.
I mean, really, everything is wrapped around this unknown aspect. As much research as I do or you do before we leave on these trips.
Right.
The predecessors, you know, we've scoured the library shelves for meaningful entry points into knowing population, what would make things work, education systems, all of that. But you still don't know the place. And it's discovery of place, but you're from New York, you're from California, and you're going to God knows where.
Right.
And you got to figure it out. And you got to bring back all the knowledge you've accumulated from the library and use that to help you navigate through this unknown space.
Right.
And it's a white space. And you're filling in and coloring the place in. I mean, that's just it. You take this adventure into the white space and we color it in. And it's up to us. One of my first gigs of adventure was for the American Geographic Association, it was founded by Benjamin Franklin, and it's the actual sort of professors of geography subscribe. And before, my job was to go down the Ubangi, and map the tributaries. I didn't know how to map, but I was willing to go down to buy a pirogue and paddle with all kinds of shotgun shells and wine down the Ubangi River. And I came back and I made my presentation to the society at sort of the yearly gala. And the big shot of the group put his arms around me after reading my report and said, "Rory, congratulations. Terra Incognito is safe in your hand."
Yes.
But the trip down the river was just, living off of.
Well, let me point out to listeners that what you're talking about is the difference between an expedition and an adventure, right? And if you're a member of these groups that pride themselves on being scientists, you have to do measurements every day, right? You have to overlay some kind of scientific framework to what you're doing. You can't just wander off into the bushes and get chased by headhunters. That's not of interest. And I have to say that the best adventures always happen, particularly with Sir Richard Burton, is when all his equipment was smashed and he just hung out in these villages writing down local, culture and life and sexual habits and things like that. Well, Speke dashed off to go discover the Nile, but didn't actually measure anything while he was doing it, and that set up that great conflict of who was an explorer, right? But I just think that when you join these organizations and they say, well, I went there and I measured, it's like, no, that's not what adventure is about. And I want to use that as a segue because you also wrote about armed groups. And that is true adventure, right? When people are surrounding you with weapons and they don't quite know who you are, and you're engaged in documenting them performing violent acts and talking about whatever they're talking about. How did you shift from this sort of natural love of water and exploration to this journalism, documenting the IRA and I don't know if it was the SPLA and the SN National Democrat, whatever, but you'll explain all that in Sudan.
So after the second book, it was great making money doing this and turning to my girlfriend and saying, I got to do serious journalism now.
Yeah.
And she's looking at me going, wait a minute, you're crazy. You can actually make dough doing the stuff you do. Crazy edge. And now you want to become, what? Exactly. But it was to be able to put the things I learned on the adventure trail, on an ability to roll with it, an ability to live in just shitholes and say that's what comes with it all. And I thought, well, that will help me. And so I read a piece in the New York Times. It was a small squib, literally page 12, a 2-column piece on Sudan. And the UN had just declared that 80% of the country was near famine. And I realized that this is on page 13, 2 inches. Why isn't this written about? What's wrong with us to have let this happen?
Somebody's got their tractor going. So I'm closing the door. So what year was this? So I get a feeling of what year did you read this story?
This is 1992.
And there is a war raging in Sudan. It's quite a large war.
And so it's a war, it's a civil war with not only the North against the South, but the factions of rebels fighting themselves.
Yeah.
So you have Sudan, which was the largest at the time, the largest country in Africa. And through British colonialism, they had separated the two halves of a Muslim North, Arab-based, and a Black animist culture South, which missionaries had come into, and they were going to turn people around to a God that nobody liked in the North. But it set up a cultural problem that still exists to this day.
So this war was a dirty war. It was an unreported war, you could say. How do you pitch this to someone to get the funding and the go-ahead to write a story?
So I wrote an introduction, a proposal, and I pitched it to a new magazine that was just starting called Men's Journal. John Rasmus read the piece, my proposal. I met him and convinced him that this was a good idea.
And I know Don because he gave me that look like, okay, you go to war zones, but what would you do for us? And I'd be adventurous? I don't know.
But I had proved with my 2 books that I could write.
Right. And that's the difference between me and you. You're
that
an
was
actual
my
writer.
introduction. So he wasn't taking a chance on a newbie coming in on, what are you going to produce?
Yeah.
I'm going to produce something that's going to be of value to him and to hit what he saw as his magazine in the inaugural issue.
And
So just a little aside. So back then, Men's Journal was a huge magazine, the size of Life magazine or something. It was thick. It was not glossy. It had actually kind of a matte cover. It was a very prestigious magazine, and it was owned by Jan Wenner, right, the Rolling Stone guy,
Yes.
who wanted to be adventurous. It was kind of like the Vice before Vice was Vice. It was a statement magazine.
Jan wanted to make an adventure magazine for men to recreate the best years of, let's say, Esquire, with top writing, with an edge.
right.
So they wanted wild stories from the edge as part of, what they were about. And I happened to be timing-wise perfect in the sense of they were ramping up for their first edition, and they needed some big story if they could get it. And they threw the bones out to several people, myself included. And I returned with the goods. And so that took me to South Sudan. And I flew in with a whole bunch of other reporters. They left, and I stayed for 6 weeks to live with this guy called Riek Machar, who is now who's in jail now, vice president of South Sudan. Anyway, I lived with him for 6 weeks in his camp. And for 5 of those weeks, we were literally running toward Ethiopia. There was no more gas, no more diesel. And the opposition rebel group was out to kill him and me.
And just for listeners, Riek Machar actually has a very plummy accent. He went to college in London. He's got a PhD in, I think, agriculture or something. And he talks a good game, but when you actually get on the ground and you look around, you go, you don't have a pot to piss in, do you? So you hung yourself out probably in easily the most dangerous part of the world. That area, human life is worth nothing. You'll tell stories, but I'm saying that I've never been to a place just littered with so many dead bodies, just picked by vultures and left to rot.
No, the vultures couldn't fly. They were too fat to fly. They'd hop. Wild dogs and jackals would be walking by with, oh my God, what is that, a leg or an arm? We're not sure. In my time there, the UN estimate was that within a half a mile of my shadow, more than 27,000 people died. So you're literally walking over bodies, and you can't avoid them. And at the same time, you're this white guy with a medical kit you've gone in with, you become the doctor. You have to deal with certainly people within the army, as well as villagers who come to you of, my wound, cure me, or, amputate, whatever it is. And as part of your job as a journalist is, well, you stop being a journalist, and now you're just a human being doing what you can. It's mind-blowing.
Yeah. Now, part of usually the unwritten rule is that when you embed or you're getting an invite from a rebel group, you kind of talk about the nice things, not necessarily the ugly things. But that was an ugly war in all means. And I want to point people to, you and I are both in the same book, the Men's Journal, Best of, blah, 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 which I'll put up, anthology. And I just thought your article was just mind-blowing. It was probably one of the first, dystopian, apocalyptic stories about being in a war. Literally made no sense. It's nice to say that it's the animus versus the Arabs, but it's just tribal mayhem, day in, day out.
The biggest problem that I encountered there, besides the death that circled around you, was the lack of an intelligent discussion about what it was all about. This idea that it was about Muslim versus Christian, well, that was baloney, because I was in the North. The North wasn't fighting the South then. This was, rebel group fighting rebel group, tribe fighting tribe. Because they've been fighting for millennia? I don't know. But when you ask people, you're in this and you're a Noor, you're against the Dinka. You're a Dinka, you're against the Noor. And I'm in the army. It's like there aren't many other jobs offered. There's no sign up board other than the army for both tribes.
Right. So you come back and you got to write this article for Men's Journal. Was it hard to shape it, or did you feel you had this incredible story of, I use the word dystopian because that's what it is, but when you shaped the article, what did you want to focus on, and what did you want to communicate?
Despair. That was what I found. It was the place was a vacuum for hope. Nobody saw the future. Everything was day to day, minute by minute. There was no sense of money. That meant nothing to people.
You'd be remiss if you didn't mention one of Riak's wives. And remember Emma? I don't know if she was in the field, but this was at the time when people saw a concert or they saw something and they wanted to help, and Africa was starving and we were going to all throw food at them and fix them. And your article was very much not that story. But Riak's wife, and Riak, I guess to a certain degree, because he had to know, manipulated the media into thinking that if you come out here and write this story, good things will happen. And I remember this one photo of I don't know if it's a boy or a girl, but he's sitting with his head bowed and there's a vulture watching him, and the South African photographer took that snapshot. Well, he was kind of lured onto that flight by saying, oh, we're dropping food off at this place, and there was no food on the plane. And they got there, the UN plane landed, they did their thing and took off, and these people all flocked to the region. They got their shots, and they got back on the plane, but nothing actually happened. It was just this pity factory. And I think your article, probably of all of them, captured it the best.
That's because I stayed in country for 6 weeks and was shot at for 6 weeks.
Thank God they can't hit, right? Like, thank God in a full frontal assault they can't hit shit.
And this is the BBC, so some of the Army would have on World Report, Africa Today.
Yeah.
And listening to my name being mentioned as the American journalist who had just been killed during this battle of
They used
to bomb us. We would all shower and whatever, bathe, and then listen to the BBC, and then these old Antonovs would fly over and they roll bombs out the back.
They roll fucking bombs out in 50-gallon barrels. I know.
So when you wrote that,
what was the
insanity of it? And that's what I tried to get through was, this is what I experienced, was the insanity of it all.
To do.
In the end, I made quite a bit of dough, only because I held on to picture rights. There was no photographer. I've never traveled with a photographer.
Right.
I took my own pictures. And we were able to syndicate the piece around the world. It was good enough to be picked up.
Wow. In
various magazines.
Excellent.
And from Jan's viewpoint, it was nominated for an ASME, and American Society of Magazine Editors. Mm-hmm. And for the first time ever, Jan was up for an award.
You made him respectable. God. You made him respectable.
Never had happened before.
Well, what was, when you got home, and I'm assuming you lived in a fairly nice place in New York or apartment, how did your mind process what you just experienced?
Well, first it was delirium because I had to shake the malaria and the dengue. So, it was just like aching bones and fever dreams. And then, we only had a postcard. We had a small pied-à-terre in the city when we lived in where I am now in New Bedford, Massachusetts, where I wrote the article. So you go back to this, at that time, 93, New Bedford was this, prime example of Rust Belt America. Mm-hmm. And you're looking around you and going, well, there's a certain amount of hope here, but it's as, in many ways as fucked a scene as what I just came out of. There wasn't much of a transition from, God, this sucks, to, Jesus Christ, I need a junkie, get off my stoop, will you? Please?
So did your article change or have any impact, or, people like to think, oh, I went here and I suffered through this and I captured that. Was there any secondary benefits from you having published this article?
None.
Okay. So, I, as you know, I went there. And
I will come up to you and say, I read your piece. It was great. But it didn't lead to any action on a government. It didn't lead to any action that helped the people I was writing about that I wanted to help.
Well, you and I have a bond because I went there in 2013 and nothing had changed. I'm sitting with the same guy. I literally can transpose what he's saying on top of what he was saying in the 90s. I can literally see spears sticking out of people's asses in slaughters that were identical to the 90s. And Vice put it on the YouTube, on the YouTube channel, and the most unfiltered thing you can see are the comments under videos. And it is no different than 1950s America, like the most racist, disgusting, insulting things. But in a way, it's kind of like a testament to, can a writer go out, capture something at great risk to himself, publish it in a prestigious platform that is shared by the hoi polloi of high society, and then absolutely result in nothing other than the paycheck he gets, right? And this is, it maybe not sounds depressing to people that want to follow in your path, but this is the reality of adventure journalism. It's literally what it is.
When your topic is Black people and Africa,
Right.
in this country,
Right.
and compared to another story I did inside the IRA, which had ended up having a lot of snap to its punch, and yes, getting actually a President Bill Clinton to pick up the phone and call his counterpart, John Major, in England, and pressure him to get negotiations going. I had just read, and he had sent me a note complimenting me on the story. And then hearing from the Sinn Féin and the IRA later on that it worked. It was part of their ploy. They hoped that they could pull it off. And we needed to chill, tell our story, and see what happens. Everything else, nothing else has worked, so maybe this will work. And in fact, it did help.
So, I did an interview in Afghanistan with another Irish jihadi, John Walker Lind, and that had far more impact than anything I've done in Africa and Asia. And I was dragged into a court case. There was all kinds of public, outcry about what this guy had said to me. And again, I felt like, no, he's just another idiot that signed up for jihad, right? And I share your sense, but at the same time, you have to go to Africa, you have to go to Asia, you have to go to Burma, you have to kind of show the world to people at its ugliest and most unflattering, and you don't necessarily benefit the same way by doing it. And I guess that's the lesson, right? The message. And in your case, the quality of experience stays the same. The quality of your writing and your capturing of the story is identical. You have the same curiosity, you have the same note-taking, photography skills. It's just fascinating how the reaction differs greatly.
Very much so. And again, I'll just get back to, I'll repeat myself. If it's Africa, which means it's Black people, you're not going to get much play in America. And it didn't matter what kind of administration you had. Well, even if it was Obama, there just wasn't enough attention played to these places. And at the time that they decide to actually do something, as in, let's say, the division of South Sudan or the separation of South Sudan into a country, breaking away from Sudan itself, it is done in such a haphazard, horrible way, in my belief, that all you've done is you've engendered more trouble, more war, and a continuation of the worst from the past.
So let's go on a positive note now. So a lot of people between the ages of, let's say, 15 to 25 are looking forward. They admire people like you and me because they read stuff and they go, I want to do this when I grow up. Are you hiring? Do you have an apprentice program? Give me advice, or not me, but give advice to those people that admire what you've done and are seeking a life that's adventurous.
I'd say the only ticket available for that kind of travel today, since magazines are not around or will pay the freight, is for the individual to make dough, doing something, and then instead of blowing it on a car or a fancy apartment, is to go on that trip of imagination.
And there are YouTubers that have significant followers. I wouldn't call them danger tubers, but there are people that go to exotic places, and some are terrible and some are great. But that is an income stream for hanging it out there. And Men's Journal, I don't think exists anymore. If it does, it's not really a magazine. But there are other avenues because people are fascinated by adventure, and they're fascinated by people who take that leap into the unknown. And whatever happens, they write it down honestly. And you're working on a new book, but it's actually an old book because it's been in your brain for many, many years. And when you think about your legacy, if you were to point people to something that you want them to read first, say, this is the thing that I want you to read. Is it this book that you're writing, or is it something that you've done before that you want them to read?
I'm not sure I have an answer for that question or ever will, because all of the books are an exposure of myself and my own soul. And I'm just trying to get to become a better writer.
But at the same time, it launches people into their own adventure, right?
Reading,
Oh, absolutely. It's all a door opener to the unknown and adventure.
whether you go backwards or forwards.
Forwards, in history.
Both in history and in your own life.
Yeah.
Is there anything, and I don't know if you look at things, sort of in the gestalt about society and culture and media, but is there anything you can tell listeners about how to pursue adventure and the benefits of pursuing adventure that you want to pass on to them?
It's all about self-knowledge in a way. So, I mean, there's no tip I can give an individual as to what he or she can get out of traipsing into the unknown, rather than an intense feeling of satisfaction that you can't get anywhere else. Certainly, traveling in the white blank, it's all up to you and place. And, my writing is mostly about place. What that means, where people come from, where the fucking rocks come from, and how we got there, the geologic expedition. So, no, I think it's all about self-discovery, Robert. But the bigger picture is traipsing in the unknown. You never know what the fuck you got to find. And to me, that's the beauty. You don't have any answer.
But the sad, depressing thing I say to people is that we are living in the unknown. You are stepping into the unknown because it's a myth to think that everything is laid out correctly for you, right? Whether you find out you have a cancer diagnosis or you get hit by a bus or whatever, you live in the unknown. It's best to accept it as early as possible and learn how to deal with it.
Sure.
But in the meantime, read your damn books.
The only thing you're going to be able to rely on is the love of your animal, your dog, or the Dalmatian licking your ear. That you can rely on.
My unpaid coworkers.
All right. Well, look, I want to wrap it up there. This is great. I really admire your work, your body of work, and I really admire you as a person for taking the time to go do stupid things and then write them down. And
this is where nuts find nuts, Robert. That's why I like you as much.
It's not insanity.
it's people say you're insane. I said, no, I'm the sanest person you'll ever meet because I'm still alive and I'm happy. And you appear to be happy and healthy. So I'm just saying there is no bad thing to adventure. It's just how much you want to absorb, right? And if it gets too much, then back off. But I just hope that you are a shining example of someone who has benefited by it and who's laid down there's a lot of reading ahead of people here. You got your upcoming book. When does your upcoming book come out? Or do I sound like your editor nagging?
You're not a nagger. So we'll be taking at least 2 years. It's going to take me another year to write. And then there's just in the publishing world, it takes a year by the time you finish.
Yeah.
You get it out,
Was I correct in saying that you were using a Selectric? You were typing?
This computer is plopped on top of my Selectric, yes.
Okay, well.
All right, well, let's leave it at that. So, Rory, it's awesome, and we'll chat again. Definitely, we'll chat again. All right, my friend.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Love you. Thank you.
Okay.